Street, we planted 25 new street trees. It was a block of the city, a block of our district that had 5 trees to begin with, and a couple of them were in bad shape to say the least. The project was funded through the Century Fund and through some of the old Allentown house store proceeds, but it was only made possible because of the cooperation that we got from the city of Allentown, particularly the Public Works Department and the Parks Department. In the days leading up to the Earth Day event, the city of Allentown and the Public Works Department, they cut and created 22 new tree pits in the sidewalk. That involved saw cutting the concrete, removing the concrete, removing the base stone, removing the unsuitable subsoil and putting in proper topsoil for planting the trees. There were existing tree pits that were enlarged to meet current guidelines for how big the tree pit should be. There were 3 existing trees that were dead or dying or in significant decline. The Parks Department came in and took those down and ground the stumps out. And all this happened, despite late season snowfall, early spring rains, and a bunch of other high-profile, similar type projects that were taking place on Turner Street, 6th Street, and the True Street area of Sacred Heart, where street trees and street lights and stuff were going in as well. So the city really came through for us. They turned a project that was underfunded and quite honestly in jeopardy. They turned it into a possibility. And the end result really was a 50-year investment or more on this block. By putting the trees on this block, it's going to improve the air quality, it's going to improve the aesthetics of the block, and I think it's going to improve the property values and the overall general welfare and morale of this block. So it was a long time coming. We started working on this project in 2014, and I just want to say thanks to the city and their cooperation with the Public Works Department and Parks Department, it really became possible. So I just think it's important that you all know how much we appreciate the help and support that we get from the city.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Very nice. And you're on the commission. You're on the Shade Tree Commission for many years, right?
That's correct.
How many?
I've lost count.
I know. Fine job. We appreciate your nice comments, Mr. Messenger. Please get that down to your men in the streets also. But thank you, Christian.
All right.
Good seeing you.
Yeah.
Anyone else courtesy of the floor?
Can you hold this for a second? Just hold it.
Oh, Mr. Conley.
Turn the camera on.
Thank you. Robert Trotner, 1920 Whitehall Street, Allentown. I want to know if possibly Mr. Glazer, Mr. Hartzell might have an update. There's an item in the state budget for the casino tax for $3.1 million, of which we're entitled to, and it's put in the budget as if we're going to get it. I'm wondering if anybody has an update. I haven't heard that.
We'll get you an update. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
3.9. No, stay there. 3.9. Mr. Hartzell, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. We were notified just this week that the end of first quarter distribution from the state of Pennsylvania had arrived from the Commonwealth, which came in a little less than we thought, not absurdly so. It came in about $746,000, which means we're now at about 2.2 million or so for the year. If the distributions continue at that rate, we're going to probably come in a little under 3.9, not too far. But my last understanding is, up to this point, we're getting pretty close to the cash that we would expect from it up to this stage, and taking in about 2.2 million. The courts had made the declaration that the legislature needed to get this solved by, I believe, last week in May. So that will be interesting to see what happens if they still cannot figure that out. But we have taken in 2.2 million that we had intended to get already in cash this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Anyone else coming to the floor? Mr. Hans coming up?
Mr. Horn's up there.
Good evening, Council. My question
Maybe
tonight,
that
Tom Horn, 2016 East Highland Street. My question tonight is, what are, if there are any rules, that the vacancy fund money that's in the budget cannot be spent for anything else but for replacing the person that's missing in the vacancy fund, and that money would not be spent or used in the budget for anything else but hiring the person that is needed or not needed, then the money shouldn't be appropriated in the budget for the vacancy to pay the salary. What are the rules and regulations that money cannot be used or spent other than to hire the person that the vacancy provided?
Good question. Mr. Hartzell, I think all members of the city council have had that question for quite a while. But go ahead, Mr. Hartzell.
I have often said when it comes to the general fund that it is one big general operation of the city into which general revenues go and which expenditures generally happen. Our council has approved a budget that has specific appropriations in it, including in many cases for the positions that are currently vacant. And those positions have already been legally approved, so there wouldn't be a need to come in front of council to have a discussion about that if we just need to actually hire the position if that were wished. If there were a request from the administration to alter what has already been approved in the budget, obviously we have to come in front of council to make that request and give an explanation as to why. But as far as the dollars are budgeted there for a certain number of positions, and so they are already factored in as expected that what we're going to hire during the course of the year. So it's always hard when you're dealing with a general fund issue to tie specific revenues to specific expenditures, but I will say that all of the positions that were intended to be budgeted are so in full.
So, I think the question was, and I know you answered it in the beginning, that it's just one big pot of money, okay? But the question I think I heard Mr. Horn this time, you could clarify, is that money that has been used, is the money that has been allocated for those positions, or is that money being used for something else?
No, it's not. It's the monies that are in there already are intended for the particular purposes, and if we were to make any adjustments to that plan, as is already listed out in the budget, we'd have to come in front of you for it. So, no, those things are not being set aside to pay for other things.
Could I then have a report made out of what the savings were and where, and that money be carried over and not spent from the, say, from the controller's department, that all that money then would be a savings and would be carried over into the next budget year that wasn't filled. For example, when we were missing policemen or firemen, there was a couple of years where it was just, they weren't replaced, and they weren't replaced, Well, what happened to all that money that was built up in the budget to be used for hiring those people? And you can't find it in the budget. You can't find the line item of vacancy money that is being built up or put into an account where it's an interest-bearing account that at least a couple pennies can come back. I understand the procedure, but I still don't know where the money is. Is there some way that we can find out, let's say going back 2 years or 3, to say what was allocated in the budget and where is that money today that still should be there for the jobs that were in the vacancy thing? I mean, how do you go about finding that out?
One last stab at it. The money doesn't necessarily get carried over. A budget is a budget. We did 2016 budget, which was approved, and there were items there that needed to be filled, and they haven't been filled, so that money is somewhere. We know that somewhere. And if we would fill those, like Mr. agrees, the 2 paramedics, for example, that money is there to fill those positions.
The best thing, exactly, the best way to look at it is to see what we budgeted at the start of the year. And then you get to the end of the year or during the course of the year. End of the year is the best way to do it, and see how we came in revenues against expenditures based upon what we did. If there is a better position than that, yeah, it's sitting in the general fund reserves. If it's not, then we don't have as many reserves. And it's not something I would be able to pick out as far as one particular category, but it is part of, a rather large part of, what we look at all the time to make sure we have sufficient reserves to carry out what the city does. And yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Hartswell.
What's
I think, Mr. Hart, we have to move on.
how will we find out that information there, or when will that come about? Quarterly, year, I mean, how will we find out that, okay, in December, we're gonna hire somebody for January, but let's say the salary, that month he got $100, but meantime, there was $1,000 running around because he didn't work every month for that money.
The key is, and we have to move on, the key is, every position that is allocated in the budget, the money is there to fill that position. Whether that position is filled or not is the responsibility of the administration. Fine, fine.
And then the last statement is, where's the money?
And Mr. Hudson said it's in the general fund.
And so the other question comes up is, should it be in the budget in the first place so it can be spent until they hire for something else? It's like falsifying the budget because you're saying you need all these people and you put the money in for the taxpayers to pay, but it doesn't happen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Horn.
The word is appropriated funds. Okay, I wanted to make sure that I'm not
unappropriated. Mr. McLean, how are you, sir? Good seeing you.
Well, how about you?
Good. Anyone else for courters of the floor? Seeing none. Approval of minutes by common consent? So moved, okay. Any old business? Seeing none. Any communications? Tonight we were going to give a proclamation to Harvey Z. Rad, Realtors. Now, we were postponing that until a later date, so pick him up. And we will go right to committee reports. Committee of the Whole, I'll do that one. The Committee of the Whole is now scheduled to meet on Tuesday, May 23rd at 6:30 to discuss Bill 5. Bill 5 will be a proposal for a charter amendment that would provide a two-term limit for the mayor. Budget and Finance, Mr. Garidi.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Budget and Finance Committee met last Wednesday, the 26th. And at that time, we discussed the monthly financial report. We also discussed 3 bills that are in the agenda today. We will discuss hopefully voting on them shortly. And we have not scheduled another meeting yet. That's my report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Community and Economic Development, Dr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has not met since the last council meeting. A future meeting has not yet been scheduled.
Thank you, sir. Human Resources Administration Appointments, Ms. Appa.
We had no appointments, and the committee has not met, and has not had a future schedule.
Thank you, ma'am. Parks and Recreation, Ms. Mota.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met this evening. We only have one bill in the agenda, and no future meeting is not yet being scheduled.
Thank you, Ms. Mota. Public Safety, Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has not met since last meeting. No future meetings are scheduled at this time.
Thank you very much, sir. Public Works, Mr. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ditto, Public Safety.
Bills, Chambers, and Intergovernmental Relations Strategy, that's my committee. The committee has not met since the last council meeting. A future meeting has not yet been scheduled. Ad hoc Committee on Inclusionary Zoning, Mr. Co-chairs, Mr. Garidi and Dr. McGuire. Any one of you can take it. Dr. McGuire had last time, so we'll go to Mr. Garidi.
We're still waiting for the reports from the Community Economic Development, so we're with Mr. Leitner to provide the reports so we can have a meeting.
Thank you, sir. Water and Sewer, the Lease and Operations Compliance Review Board. Mr. McLean's the chair, along with Budget Chairperson, which is Mr. Garidi. Mr. McLean, want to take that one?
The Water and Sewer Committee? Yeah, we're scheduled for May 23rd at 5 p.m. We had to reschedule from the 24th. We have a conflict with the 23rd, but we'll get it in.
Yes, we will, sir. And ends our reports from committees. Mr. Glazer, City Controller's report. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a report on accounts payable weekly check review for the month of April. We reviewed 512 checks. Total amount of checks was a little bit over $7 million. We did 15 wires, and the amount of wires was $2.2 million worth of wires. Couple of findings. We had one check that was made out to a wrong vendor. I think that the billing might have been a little bit confusing because the invoice included the name of an associated vendor, and it ended up getting made out to the associated vendor, but not the proper vendor. The check was, I believe, the check was pulled back and voided and reissued to the proper vendor. We identified a check where a discount was taken twice, not a whole lot of money. The discount was taken both manually, and then Eden took the discount as well. It's nice work if you can get it. I would have been much happier if it was a larger discount, we could get away with it, but I don't believe that was the case. We identified 10 invoices that were paid a little bit later than they should have been. In some instances, it was a vendor's issue. In some instances, it was our responsibility. And all the departments have been apprised and will work to do better in the future. And there was one late fee that was paid, and that was for $98. And that department didn't receive the invoice and didn't notice that it hadn't been paid until they got a late notice in April. And going forward, they'll put a tickler on their calendar to make sure that they see that, check for that invoice every month. Hopefully the next meeting, in addition to fleet, I'll have some bank reconciliation reports to discuss with council also. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Glazer. Mr. Green, go ahead.
Thank you for the report, Mr. Glazer. Just a quick question, talking to some of the public attendees or meetings. You're reviewing the April checks, right? Not necessarily the reconciliation of this, or the bank reconciliation in prior months. There's a couple of months up behind on that, right?
Charitably, yes.
But for the, I think you said you reviewed the monthly checks for April, this past month, and you coincide that review with the monthly reports usually, right? Finance report?
I'm not quite sure when you say the monthly financial report, the report the Treasury generates?
Correct.
And the question is again that
when you review that, do you check to make sure that, let's say, for example, I'd be asked, do you review the reconciliation of the bank statements and now the report that is submitted? My answer was that you reviewing that as well, because I think the issue is we want to make sure that the money is in the bank. So whatever it says in the report.
well, Mr. Hartzell may want to weigh in on this also. This report is a real-time report in that, one of the things that the controller's office does is review all the accounts payable checks that are generated every week. We do it either on a Friday or Monday, depending on when the run is. And that's really, from that review, generates this report. The bank reconciliations are a trailing report, as it were. I think the last report that I gave was probably, unfortunately, for the month of August. And so, that report, as I said, is definitely a trailing report. As how it ties into the monthly report that we get from finance, I would be happy to let Mr. Hartzell take a whack at that.
Go ahead, Mr. Hartzell.
Thank you, Mr. President. And with respect to the bank reconciliations, we have completed through December at this point. He is right that we need to be more up to date on that, and that's been an issue that I have not sufficiently addressed in the time that I've been here. But with respect to checking those expenditures to make sure that they are appropriate. We will not put anything in that monthly report unless it's an actual expenditure or an actual revenue. And if it's an actual expenditure, he's already looked at it. So what you see in there is, it is in real time, and it's going to be conditioned upon, if there is an issue that the controller raises about it, it will be addressed sufficiently before we put it into the expenditure column.
Well, that's what I figured, but I wanted to ask you the question directly, both of you, to make sure that we are intent with what we're saying. Okay. Thank you both.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Glazer, again.
One more comment on that. You know, the city and the controller are both very fortunate to have a very good auditor, and she and I do this together. I mean, she may do some of it all weeks, I may do some of it all the weeks in terms of reviewing the checks, and sometimes we split it, but between the two of us, we have a pretty good eye for the checks that go through and understanding the issues. So,
There you go.
There's a very good look at these things.
I think what they want to measure is to make sure that when a check is written, that the money's in the bank, and that the report that is produced, which is real time, that the money is said by the revenue section, that is in there.
Understood. Thank you, sir.
Appointments, we have no appointments for this evening. Ordinances for final passage. Mr. Hammond, read Bill 16, please.
Bill 16 amends the 2017 General Fund, the Trexler Fund, the Risk Fund, the Equipment Fund, the Solid Waste Fund, the GOP Fund, by appropriating funds from the unappropriated balances for the rollover of encumbrances for the prior year.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Greedy, that was in your committee last week.
Yes, it was, and we forwarded February 3-0. And this basically is what Mr. Hannon just said, is encumbrances from 2016, 2017 for a number of accounts and also projects that encumbered to be completed, perhaps in 2017. It's just a rollover. So.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from my colleagues? Comments from the public? Mr. Hammond, we will vote on Bill 16 with our iPad. Okay, Mr. Hammond, we're ready to roll? I am, anyway.
Mr. President, I have 7 yeas and no nays.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Hammond, Bill 18.
Bill 18 basically amends the 2016 Risk Fund budget by transferring $1,068,793 from the unappropriated balance of the 2016 General Fund to cover the remaining costs for the employee health benefits. And there was an amendment that was suggested at the committee meeting, and that amendment would add to each section of the ordinance, authorize a supplemental appropriation, and would add the words from the cash reserve to the unappropriated balance. So do you want to do that by common consent?
Yes. Common consent, fine. And Mr. Greedy, that was in your committee last week also?
Correct. So thank you. And it's basically what it says. We just need to pay the health benefits, employee health benefits, and transfer to the risk fund and the general unappropriated balance of the general fund.
Thank you, sir. Comments of my colleagues? Comments from the public. Mr. Hamel will vote on Bill 18. Bill 19.
Bill 19, and it's the 2017 grant fund budget to provide for supplemental appropriation, $500,000 from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, the City of Allentown. It's a pass-through grant to the Allentown Public Library to provide funding to renovate the library's heating and ventilation system.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Greedy, that was in your committee last week also.
And that also passed unanimously, voted at 3-0 to the full whole council meeting for the pass-through grant from the Department of Education, the HABC system.
Thank you, sir. Comments from my colleagues? Comments from the public? Mr. Allen will vote on Bill 19.
Spread out 7 yeas and no nays.
Thank you. Bill 28.
Bill 28 amends the 2017 general fund budget in the amount of $10,000 to properly budget for the credit card fees for processing ticket sales for lights in the parkway.
Thank you, Mr. Hannon. And Ms. Moda, that was in your committee earlier this evening?
Yes, Mr. President, it's basically what it says. It was passed favorably through this era, favorably in front of council.
Thank you, Ms. Moda. Comments from my colleagues? Comments from the public? We'll go on Bill 28.
Spread out 7 yeas and no nays.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hannon, Bill 29, please read that, and then we'll discuss this.
Bill 29 to be introduced and voted on. Amends the 2017 general fund budget and the 2017 liquid fuels budget by appropriating funds from the unappropriated balance of the general fund and liquid fuels fund to cover the costs for hiring of contractors to assist in the March 14th snowstorm for a total cost of $193,201.85.
Thank you, Mr. Hartzell. Want to take that one? Probably pretty self-explanatory.
It is, generally speaking, and I think if you want to go into the details of why it came out to that cost, Mr. Messenger can come to the table. You will recall, though, that the storm that we had back in January of 2016, in which we had 33 inches roughly that fell on the city, caused a rather sizable amount of expenditures to be made at that point. We requested reimbursement from FEMA and PEMA, and we have received $311,000 back from that, and are expecting about another $110,000 to come back before it's all over with. And we've replenished what we took from the liquid fuels fund and have been replenishing the general fund with the remainder. Apparently, a 14-inch size snowstorm is not quite big enough to qualify for FEMA and PEMA. And so we're on the hook at this case with what was indeed a lot of snow to get out of here in a hurry in a few days to be able to pay for these expenditures. And this is what the bill came to. And it was a large storm, so we're going to have a big bump in this. Liquid fuels is taking about 3/4 of the cost of this. But it's certainly not as bad as the year before, which is probably why we are not getting any reimbursement for it.
And thank you. And for my colleagues, which we all know, but for the public, there were some counties, obviously, that were reimbursed because they had a higher snowfall amount. What was the cap? What's the estimate it would have had to be to get reimbursed by the state? You know, the feds, the state to us.
They'll never really tell you what that is.
Okay.
They'll go on, like anything else, by the funds that they feel they're going to appropriate at that time, and then the amount of areas that are putting in for funding. So I'm looking at, they normally, unless you're going to get, say 26, 28, 30 inches of snow, that's not something that they'll go with. But I'd like to say we were actually forecasted at different times that that's how much snow we were supposed to get.
It's 24 to 28.
And unfortunately, when you're hiring the contractors, you have to hire them before the snow actually goes down, because if not, you're not going to be the one lucky enough to get them.
Good point, Mr. Minister. Comments from my colleagues? Comments from my colleagues on Bill 29? Seeing none. Mr. Hunter, come on up.
what we're talking about. So Glenn, I'm sorry, so that one. Did we ever receive any money for 2016?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. I think we got about 561 or 526, 561. Yes, we did.
I wish it were that high. That it turned out the total amount we're going to end up getting is about 425,000, which actually is a bit better than we were thinking about before. The first 310,000, it has already arrived, and I will show at the next monthly report when I see him exactly what line that went into.
Right.
Okay, we did.
Yeah, we did. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Holland, go ahead.
Tom Holland, repeating the address. The question comes up on, is the liquid fuel, has there any money been borrowed out of that? Is that stable? I mean, how are we doing with the funds in that?
Mr. Holland, I hate to do this to you, but it's really irrelevant to the bill.
If they're taking the money out of the fund that they already borrowed money from, how does it get replaced?
It's really irrelevant, but the money, go ahead. The money's there. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Hartzell.
The money is there, and on top of it all, I think we received the largest ever infusion from the Commonwealth this year into the fund for gas taxes and increase, and I'm sure that was probably it. And as pointed out, a concern raised about whether we were, quote, borrowing from, end quote, the liquid fuels fund when the reimbursement for the snowstorm from 16 came back in. The very first thing we did was make the liquid fuels fund whole before we went ahead and added things to the general fund. So we're always conscientious to keep that particular fund and the reasons for which we use it in very good shape.
Thank you, Mr. Hartzell. Comments from anybody else from the public? Okay, Mr. Hammond, call a vote on Bill 29.
I just wanted that brought out for the public.
Mr. President, I have 7 yeas and no nays.
Okay, thank you. There are no resolutions for final passage. We'll go to ordinance for introduction. These are to be referred to committee with public comment prior to referral. Bill 30, Mr. Hammond.
Bill 30 amends the general fund budget to provide for a supplemental appropriation of $675 from the Allentown School District to the City of Allentown for reimbursement of premium pay costs for teaching CPR classes to the school district security staff.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hammond, comments from my colleagues about Bill 30? Comments from the public about Bill 30? Seeing none, Mr. Hennig will refer that to public safety.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Very welcome. Mr. Hamlin, Bill 31.
Bill 31 provides for the vacation of a portion of East Nebo Street from the center line of North Plymouth Street to the center line of North Nelson Street in the 15th ward of the City of Allentown. The vacation was recommended by the Planning Commission. The LPC found the request consistent with the Regional Transportation Improvement Plan and offered no comments.
Thank you, sir. Comments from my colleagues about Bill 31? Comments from the public? Seeing none, Mr. McLean will go to Public Works.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Hammond, Bill 32.
Bill 32 provides for the vacation of a portion of South Jude Street from the center line of Montgomery Street to the center line of Cook Street in the 19th ward.
Thank you, sir. Comments from my colleagues? Bill 32. Comments from the public? Mr. McLean, Public Works again.
Thank you again.
You're welcome. Bill 33, Mr. Hamlin.
Bill 33 amends the capital fund budget to provide for a supplemental appropriation of $150,000 as a result of a grant from the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for the paying of professional services to design, complete construction documents, provide bid assistance, and build a portion of the Allentown section of the Jordan Creek Greenway Trail that will ultimately run from Turner Street to Jordan Park and MacArthur Road.
Thank you, sir. Comments from my colleagues? Bill 33. Comments from the public? I see Mr. Legislator coming up. Hello, Mr. Legislator. Name and address for the record.
Ken Legislator, 721 West Cumberland Street, Allentown. My question is, why are we stopping at Turner Street? I know the city plan is to go and have a trailhead at Union where we bought property. Why don't we just continue the trail plan down to Union Street instead of stopping at Turner?
Mr. Taylor, you want to answer that? Stay here, Mr. Legislator.
Thank you. This is, the grant application that was submitted was for this section. So while our desire in the future is to make that link, this grant, this application, which was submitted back in 2012, is for Turner to the Carpet Road.
So there's a possibility there'll be another grant down the road that would extend it,
Yes,
that
yes.
Mr. Lotus was talking about? How are you with that? Okay, good. That's fair, you know, that's fair. Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Yeah, appreciate that. Any other comments from the public on Bill 33? Ms. Mota, that'll go to Reports and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Howland, Bill 34.
Bill 34 amends the general fund budget to provide for a supplemental appropriation of $12,000 as a result of a grant from the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission to fund the Historical Preservation Specialist Consultant to assist in the city's Historic Architectural Review Board, and the grant requires
$50 match. Okay, comments from my colleagues? Bill 34. Comments from the public? Seeing none. Dr. McGuire, CDDC, all yours. You're very welcome. Resolutions for introduction, there are none. Anyone have any new business? Anyone have anything for good and welfare? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Comments and consent? 46 minutes.
I sent it already to the Allen, it's appropriate. That's the word I used.